Hey guys, welcome back for another episode of Not the Girl Next Door. I'm your host, Meg Reynolds, and I have one question to start this week's episode, and it's, were our parents really right? Is it the damn phones? Kids and their damn phones these days. Oh my God, everyone in their technology. Half the time, I think the older generations are actually the worst with their phones now, but that's a whole other discussion. I know for me, we talked all about last week how I think the best thing we can do in our lives, if you're feeling this need to rebrand, is getting back in touch with yourself. And I think discussing the analog trend that we're seeing right now and people's desire to get back into physical hobbies shows how we have lost sight of ourselves, right? You know, I said last week that if you're feeling this need to rebrand your life and you're feeling like lost, I think it's a sign that you have lost touch with who you are as a human and like what you stand for. And this, I think the analog trend is a direct response to the way in which society has kind of homogenized culture. And I mean, culture has it's always been homogenized, but now it's just so easily accessible. Whereas before it was in physical media, magazines, trashy reality TV, advertisements in the newspaper. It was easy to disconnect from those trends and the things that were popular. Now it's like you can't escape it. Everything is an ad. It's the cool girl aesthetic, the clean girl aesthetic, the, how to be your girl boss, like so many buzzwords that it's like, I don't even know what any of this means anymore. And I'm sure a lot of you feel the exact same way about that. Like for me personally, the only thing I want this year is just to keep being weird as fuck and create things that make me happy. That's all I want out of life. And I'm going to keep doing that. But I personally have been feeling this nostalgia. And that's why this is the Nostalgia Epidemic Part 2. I talked about this last season a little bit, how people are romanticizing the trends of the 2000s. And so I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that, especially now that going analog is a trend. And don't get me wrong, I'm not here to shit on this trend. I think this is one of the few trends that I really want to feed into for me personally. And, people are redefining their relationship with technology. We've seen the rise in things like Brick, the Opal app, all of these ways to limit your screen time and, really change the relationship that you have with technology and social media, which I think is a great thing. But I think all of that begs the question of how much of our issues with social media apps, dating apps, the algorithm, how much of those issues are in general because of the algorithms and the apps and the companies themselves, and how much of our issues are really stemming from our lack of boundaries with these things. I think my generation especially, we have a very all or nothing approach, 0 to 100 approach when it comes to a lot of things, with culture, with politics, with all aspects of life. Everything is so black and white, and we have lost a lot of the nuance. I've talked about that a lot as well on the podcast, but I think it just shows that I don't think social media in itself is inherently bad, that these apps themselves are inherently bad or evil. I think a lot of the bad stems from our lack of personal understanding and lack of boundaries when it comes to these things. And I think when we look at society as a whole, it's like a pendulum. When you look at a pendulum swing, it goes super far one way, super far the other way, and it keeps going like that, but it always comes back to center. I think this whole analog trend is a response to how far into influencer culture and social media culture things got. But social media usage actually peaked, studies show, in 2022. And since then, it's been a rapid decline. Now with things of the analog trend, and I will get into what that is in a minute and my thoughts on it and how people are going about it. But it's important to note that with this analog trend, it just shows how a good chunk of people, a lot of Gen Zers and I guess even Gen Alpha now, is rejecting the way in which social media apps have homogenized culture. And I think that's a power thing because it shows we're all craving individuality and we are craving connection with ourselves again. Because I would encourage you to ask yourself, when was the last time you decided your personality without first scrolling on social media to tell you what your personality should be, right? And again, this is all simplified versions for such a virgins. What? simplified version. What did I just say? Simplified versions of answers to really complex sociological topics, but I do want to try and at least grasp. Am I having a stroke right now? Try and grasp them a little bit and explain them a little bit, not just for your understanding, but for mine as well. Like, a lot of this conversation has been, kind of driven by my own thoughts and feelings, because it's something I'm feeling as well. This nostalgia, this craving of simpler times. Like, we all know the world is fucked, right? We all know that everything feels like it's going to shit, and you can't scroll on social media without seeing somebody literally get shot. Like, we all know that. So of course we're being driven offline. We don't want to be seeing that because we've become so desensitized to violence. Again, a whole other conversation, I digress, but this conversation just has so many rabbit holes that I could possibly go down. I could probably make this a 5-part series. But I want to look at why the analog is happening. Again, without getting too much into the socioeconomic and political reasons for it, that does have a lot to do with it. But I want to focus specifically on the cultural impact of this trend, because it does signal such a immense shift in the way people view social media and they view pop culture and all of these things. Like I said, culture has always been homogenized, even since like the 1920s, like ads, newspapers, magazines, they've always existed, but you could easily disconnect. Now it's as simple as putting into ChatGPT, tell me how I can rebrand my life in 2026 to be XYZ aesthetic, and it spits out a 10-part plan for you, and then it has more questions for you of, do you want me to help you with this? Do you want me to help you with that? And it takes the thinking out of figuring out who you are. And that's the whole point of figuring out who you are, is you're supposed to think. And people nowadays just are not using their brains. Our brain capacity has been so limited. Our attention spans have been so limited. And I think people are really feeling the effects of that. It makes us more anxious. It makes us more depressed. It really is the damn phones, but the damn phones themselves aren't to be blamed. It's our relationship with the phones. It's our lack of boundaries around these things. We've lost our sense of taste and style. Okay. When was the last time? And again, I love things like Pinterest. I love scrolling Pinterest for inspiration before it was AI driven and ad driven. Like, I miss the old Pinterest. And you hear people say that all the time. I miss the old Instagram algorithm. I miss the Pinterest algorithm. I miss seeing my friends on social media. And there is something to be said about that as well. And I find it fascinating that companies have not begun to kind of shift the algorithm to appease both parties, right? The parties of people who are now coming offline because they're like, well, what's the point in me posting? I don't see my friends don't see me. Like, it's no longer a way for us to stay connected with the people that we love and care about. It's the way for us to be sold to, and basically influencers to make us feel like our lives are shit and that we're not doing enough. Again, oversimplification of these complex issues, but we have lost our sense of taste and style because we are doing things in order to be perceived as a certain aesthetic. We are cultivating our image online. It's, social media apps are our own way of playing Sims, in a sense, where we're like the little me characters on the Wii. Like, that's kind of how I look at our social media presence, because we can all sit there and say social media isn't real and it's, this ideal version of people's lives, but we still compare, even though we can consciously say, oh, I know social media isn't always an accurate portrayal. We still internalize these things. I think back to the early days of social media when, Alexis Ren and Jay Alexander, they were the it couple. Everyone thought they had this amazing, adventurous life. And they, I think, are two of the influencers who I think of when I think of early days of social media and influencing. And obviously, none of us knew the horrific shit that went down in their relationship. We didn't know what their relationship was actually like. We just idealized them and had this extremely parasocial relationship with them. Obviously, now it's over a decade later, and we all know that their relationship wasn't happily ever after. But it does beg the question, like, we have come so far in terms of algorithms and the way we can consciously process media, but we haven't come so far that we're able to disconnect our identities and the way we internalize it. And I think that's fascinating. I do think social media has largely contributed to the ways in which we're seeing droves of people coming out saying, I feel so lost. I feel like I don't know myself, and just feeling like they don't know their purpose because, again, they have lost their ability to cultivate their personality based on what they actually like. And instead, it's an endless scroll of what's trending, what's popular, telling you what to wear, telling you what's a cool girl, telling you, instead of you figuring out for yourself. And that's the negative drawback, right? I do think there is a positive in the sense of social media has made it okay. Not that it was never not okay, but social media has allowed us to see, different personalities outside of our hometowns and see that there is a bigger world and understand, be connected to different people and music and things that we would have never been exposed to. And I think that is a beautiful thing. And if you use social media as a tool to cultivate, it can be a positive. But if you get lost in the sea of nonsense, you are going to continue to feel lost. Basically, this whole analog trend is about reclaiming your time and reclaiming your attention and coming back to yourself and being able to cultivate your own personality again. For me personally, and just like other people who love to read, when was the last time you went to a bookstore and actually browsed the aisles of the bookstore and read the descriptions of the book and decided for yourself, oh, this sounds like an interesting read, instead of just going on Book Talk and being like Book Talk recommendations and choosing the top 5 books that come up, not even reading the back, and just you add those to your TBR list. Don't get me wrong. I love getting recommendations from Book Talk because endless sea of books in a bookstore, but there is something so simple and wholesome about just getting lost in a bookstore, and it really makes me question, and it should make you question too, how much of your personality was spoon-fed to you by your algorithm, and how much of your personality is actually authentic to you, and how much of it is you performing for the internet once again. And I talked about that last week, how a lot of these trends and even the 2026 rebrand trend is just another way of performing for the internet. So how do you make sure you don't do that? Is you put the damn phone down, right? You should be able to sit with yourself and brain dump. And that's why I love journaling so much. Like, get your inspiration from your mind, sit and just allow your mind to decompress and think for itself without needing outside voices. I kind of talked about this last season too, how our opinions are even formed by scrolling and getting our information from other videos. Half the times we don't even get through, if someone's on a rant about something, you don't even sit and watch the whole video. You go to the comment section and you get your opinions from the comments. Is this is this a positive or negative reaction to whatever this creator is saying? Our attention spans have become so stunted, and we need to form our opinions based on the opinions of others, because I think it makes us feel like we belong. It's our need for validation. It's our need for, whatever it is. And there is still, a wholesome, harmless aspect to social media, right? Like, I think it's kind of funny how a lot of us, we end up having the same inside jokes. Like, prime example is when Joe Jonas got videoed parallel parking. And it became a whole thing. Every different comment section of a variety of videos of Joe Jonas. Oh, he's Googling how to parallel park. Like, it became an internet-wide inside joke. And I think there's something so beautiful about that, right? The ways in which these funny viral memes can bring people together. But of course, there is still that dark side of, we are being exposed to a lot of horrific things that are in turn desensitizing us to violence, and people are losing their empathy. I talked a lot about that. And I would argue how much of social media has contributed to a loss of empathy, but also how has it made us more empathetic? Because again, we're being exposed to cultures and issues we wouldn't have otherwise been exposed to. I think social media, it's all about your relationship with it, and it's all about how you use it, right? And so going analog in 2026, I think, is a great way to improve your relationship with your phone, with technology in general. But don't be doing it just because it's a trend, right? Because there's a little bit of hypocrisy when it comes to this analog trend. And it's the key to going analog is you're getting offline, right? You're not videoing every aspect of your life still. I see so many creators being like, I got a flip phone, but they're filming that flip phone video on their iPhone to talk about their new flip phone or talk about how they got an iPod. Like, where do we draw the line? Like, it's one thing, same thing. crocheting, needlepoint, reading, all these analog hobbies, they're no longer analog when you're filming an entire vlog about it, right? Like, to me, it almost defeats the purpose then. And again, it's great to go film one video about it, but we should not be seeing every single time you're reading or every single time you're crocheting if you're truly embracing this analog thing. It's again, people are just being performative for the internet. And I find that fascinating because also then what counts as being analog? Because a flip phone is still a form of technology. iPod is still technology. It's just not a smartphone. And also, are we getting rid of our smartphones? Like they still function. And now you're just feeding into consumerism and you're buying other things that you don't need instead of just improving your relationship with what you do have. Deleting your phone, maybe getting something like Brick. I think it's fascinating that we've seen such a rise in these other apps to help you limit your screen time and improve your relationship with these devices. Like, do we see the endless cycle that is occurring in society? Like, where does the line get drawn, right? For me personally, these are a lot of questions that I'm asking because, again, I work in social media for a living. My entire career is following people around with a camera and documenting their life and then editing their life for them, and helping them cultivate their online appearance. That is my entire job. I mean, this podcast itself, is me documenting my life. Like, I can't sit here and say I'm going analog in 2026 because then poof, you would never hear from me. Are the people who truly are analog are the ones from your college and high school that their last social media post was in 2022 and all of a sudden they'll pop up every now and then. You're like, oh, you're still alive. Great. Poof, they're gone again. You have no idea who they are or what they're up to. Are those truly the ones who are winning? No one's winning, but like winning the analog trend. I don't know. It's all fascinating, but what I will say is me being a photographer and videographer full-time has really improved my relationship with technology. And I know what you're thinking and you're probably like, what, how? Because for me personally, right, so much of my life is documenting other people's lives and the timeliness of that content. That content, it's like I step off the stage from a show and I'm editing photos right there. They are in by the end of the night and I'm going to bed and I'm waking up and I'm still editing because all this stuff is time sensitive, right? But when it comes to my own personal content, if you follow me, I am horrible at editing my own content because sometimes I just crave disconnect. Like, I still have to edit in my summer 2025 recap video. It is January of 2026. And I'm not mad about that. I'll get to it when I want to get to it because it's my content. Also, for me personally, I don't like to post vlogs from the road or, stuff like that in the moment because of safety. It's a safety risk, not just for myself, but for the people I work with. I don't want to be putting anybody in jeopardy and putting myself in jeopardy. And so it's really forced me to change the way I look at my own social media presence and my own content that I'm creating because I want to live in the moment. My Italy trip last summer, the best 2 weeks of my life, didn't post about it till almost a month later because I just was so in the moment and I want to live it, process it, and sit with those feelings. And honestly, I love that. And it's really improved the way that I look at my social media because I'm like, I'll get to it when I get to it. Going out photos. I'll bring my baby cam out. I call it my baby cam. I'll bring that out, click, click, click. I'll look at them tomorrow. I'm not sitting in the moment and hyperfixating and picking myself apart to get the perfect photo. I just want memories. I'm such a big fan of printing my work. Half these photos in the podcast studio behind me are my prints. And that is something I take such pride in. Being a photographer has really made me appreciate the little, again, my motto's always been, it's the little things, but for me, being a photographer is all about the art of noticing, right? It's about the art of noticing the small details, the things that are so ordinary to other people, but to us, we see some sort of magic in them. And I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to capture the moments that otherwise people would overlook and forget about. And it's, I think, a superpower. And I think it's why I love the analog trend because it makes me hope that people also notice the little things. They slow down, they romanticize their morning coffee or their little routines. Like, that's what being a photographer has done to me. And I don't think every photographer looks at things like that. I don't think everybody else looks at media like that because, again, phones have made things like photo and video so accessible that I think a lot of people do take the ability to capture those moments for granted. But for me personally, I will never take it for granted. It's an art form in and of itself. And again, it's all about the relationship you have with the medium and the art form. A big thing with this analog trend that has affected me is we're seeing a return to older forms of capturing this, right? Like Polaroid, film cameras, camcorders. Those have risen in popularity. And in turn, it's actually making those mediums more expensive. Like, I can't even tell you how much money it costs me to get Polaroid film, to get film developed. Like, it is such an expensive art form now. But it begs the question of, is it still expensive because it was so unpopular, and will it get cheaper with how popular it's getting again? Or are companies going to continue to just capitalize on that? That is a question that has yet to be answered. But all of that to say, I think you have to ask yourself, is the reason I want to go analog because I truly am craving disconnection with the society and reconnection with myself? Or am I only wanting to do it because it's cool? And I think that's something we really need to look at because, again, the person that isn't announcing their analog and hasn't posted since 2022, they're more analog than you will ever be. And I think we have to acknowledge that. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with making videos about this is what's in my analog bag and here's how I'm going to be focusing on analog hobbies in 2026. There's nothing wrong with it. In fact, I think it's great because it's spreading the awareness, but the key is going to be to then actually disconnect when you're doing those hobbies. Don't take 20 minutes to scroll on your phone. I'm guilty of this too. Don't get distracted and scroll on your phone. Like, actually focus on improving your relationship with those things, right? And with this whole analog conversation, I want to also ask the question of what has killed creativity more? Is it nostalgia or is it capitalism? I think it's a mix of both, right? Because when we look at, the last year even, of the top 10 highest grossing films in 2025, 9 of them were either a reboot or a sequel. Where is the originality? Where is the original films and TV shows? I think we're seeing how people crave these original stories now in the popularity and instant success of shows like Heated Rivalry. I personally have not watched it yet, but I do love watching all the interviews and reactions to it. And I think it just shows that people are craving that. And yes, I know Heated Rivalry is based on a book. Same with Tell Me Lies. Tell Me Lies is based on a book, but it's a completely original show. And again, at the time this episode releases, tomorrow night will be the season 3 premiere of Tell Me Lies. And I don't think I've ever been so excited for a mediocre white man to gaslight me, but here I am, like, ready and salivating for Stephen DeMarco to start gaslighting me again. Like, I did an entire episode last season about the season 2 finale because it was such an original show that I could deeply relate to and a lot of other people could relate to, and it took social media by storm. So again, we know people want these original shows and movies like Saltburn. We saw viral success there. Like, we know people are craving these original and creative storylines, but how much of the issue is that creatives aren't creative anymore versus how much is it that companies are just not investing in these original storylines because they don't fit the guaranteed success model that they see with reboots and remakes like Freakier Friday, live action Lilo and Stitch, like, even Shrek. We're getting a Shrek 5. Why? And I looked at the animation. I'm not excited about it. I feel like it ruined Shrek, but it's going to still gross, like, because it's just an instant cash grab. So part of it is the nostalgia bait that we're seeing because people are so nostalgic. We were missing our childhood. We're missing Disney Channel. Like, it's a lot of the companies feeding into that, but it's also they're just not really investing the marketing budgets into the original stories unless they already see some sort of online success like a book talk book. Again, Colleen Hoover, we know how the It Ends With Us thing went. It's still going on. Like, I just think that I would be curious to see how this analog trend impacts culture in that sense of what we are seeing be piloted in TV and film. Because again, social media has also had a great impact on the TV and film industry. So now that the pendulum has swung all the way back and we are entering this era of everyone going analog and wanting to be offline, chronically offline, what do I think the personal, socio, all of these impacts are going to be? And I think there's going to be a lot of them. I think first and foremost, I want to talk about personality in person. You will be the main character of your life again by going analog. And I don't mean that to say if you are chronically online that you are not the main character of your life. I just mean that if you are struggling with yourself, your identity, answering the question of who am I, what do I like, going offline is a great way to come back to yourself because it's going to allow your mind to actually rest, to actually disconnect, to stop comparing yourself to what you are seeing and figure out what you like. I said last week how I think if you need to rebrand, really all you need to do is figure out who you were and reconnect with your teenage self again and actually love that version of yourself this time. And I stand by that, especially because again, social media was so much simpler back in that day and age. I remember when you would get on Instagram, you would scroll, and then it'd be like, oh, that's all the new posts for today. Cool, great. No one else has posted. There's nothing else for me to see. Now it's just an endless stream of, and when you do see all your friends, half the time you don't even see your friends, but it's it's influencer, it's suggested for you. Like it's a constant explore now and an endless stream of, access to people you've never even heard of. So going offline will just allow your brain to be quiet and actually allow your mind to wander, to daydream again. When was the last time you actually just sat and daydreamed? Like, does everyone else remember being in class growing up and you would very clearly be zoning out and your teacher would call you out for it, being like, what are you thinking about? Huh? And they would get all sassy, being like, you want to share with the class what you're daydreaming about? Like, what's more important than my lesson? And they would get all snippy with you. Now it's like, again, everyone's on their phones, on their desk. I used to get in trouble for reading under my desk, fun fact. I was that nerd in school, but it would be like math class and I'm reading like not a math book. No, it wasn't smut, you freaks. Get your mind out of the gutter. I was in fucking 7th grade. It'll allow people to feel more confident in themselves because they will be not comparing themselves as much. Again, when it comes to social media, I did a whole episode last season talking about how you have to be a responsible consumer of content. And I think if you're someone that really struggles to do that, going offline and being a little more analog and improving your relationship with your phone is going to be beneficial for you, because if you are following people who make you feel like shit about yourself, who make you feel like you're not doing enough, who you're not skinny enough, not pretty enough, like you are doing yourself a disservice. At that point, you're enabling your own problems and making them worse. So you need to take a little bit of accountability there and improve your relationship with who you're following. I think it'll also allow you to probably be even more creative, right? You have to actually go out and live your life to have a story worth telling. Everyone thinks, oh, who am I to be an influencer? Now it's cool to post. But no one wants to see, like, I'm trying to think how to word this. If you're not going out and doing anything, if you're not going out and living your life, like, what are you going to actually create content about and around? You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that to be like, go film every aspect of your life. That defeats the whole purpose of being analog, but improve your relationship with yourself, especially if you deem yourself a creative, whether it's a content creator, photographer, videographer, writer, whatever, artist, like whatever it is, like go do something other than sit and scroll on your phone for your inspiration. Because then again, a lot of society is just a repurposing of ideas. We know that. But when was the last time you drew inspiration solely from your mind? Right? How much of it is you're getting inspiration from other people on TikTok who are going viral and you're like, oh, they did that, I can do that too. Again, great motivation to be like, oh, if they can do it, I can do it. Love that energy. But you should not be trying to completely replicate their idea, their video, their painting, whatever it is. I think there's also going to be a significant impact on not just friendships, but dating as well. Again, we all know everybody is so sick of dating apps. Everyone is sick of feeling like they can't meet somebody. That social media app like that dating apps have taken the fun out of dating, have taken the actual authentic connection out of it. People just want to fuck. They want to waste your time. They're emotionally unavailable. They're unhealed, blah, blah, blah. Same old song and dance. So I think if you're somebody that is super focused on staying offline in 2026, it's going to force you to get the fuck out of your house, right? Because how is the person who is meant to find you and meant to be with you going to find you if you never leave your damn couch because you're just scrolling all day long? Go out to places that you want to frequent and you'll meet, and then you'll have something in common. Oh, you like, I don't know, I'm going bowling with my friends tonight. You like bowling too? We met at the bowling alley. Great. Now we automatically have something in common. Like, we have overcomplicated dating by making it so simplified and so accessible. And I think people have lost the ability to just have a normal conversation. I think also it's important to know, and I can do a whole episode of this as well, but I think it would be fascinating to see how much social media has impacted the rise of the male loneliness epidemic and the red pill movement and misogyny, like how social media has contributed to the rise of these things because the ideas are so much more accessible. There's been a lot of people experimenting with their algorithms and, logging out or creating new accounts and seeing what the algorithm naturally feeds them. And I saw a girl on TikTok today, ironically on TikTok, but she was talking about how she did this. And when she searched feminism on YouTube, all the top videos it fed her were not actually about learning about feminism, but they were misogynist, degrading women. And so even if a young man wants to learn and get educated, he's automatically being fed this red pill pipeline content. And I think that's fascinating to think about. And so I would be curious to see how going analog impacts the way specifically men view women. And I think there's going to be a lot of data to research on that. So maybe I will do that episode. Let me know in the comments if you would want me to research that topic and do an episode on it. But we all know social media too. And I will say this about that subject because it kind of is a good segue. Social media does lead to loneliness, right? Like too long without physical human connection, it raises your cortisol, it makes you more anxious, it leads to depression. Like we all know this. So I do think right there, it's very clear of how it would have contributed to the male loneliness epidemic and the incel pipeline and all that nonsense. But it begs the question of proximity versus actual presence, because social media makes us feel more connected than ever. We have access more so than ever to all of these people. But we're not actually spending time with people in our lives. We're looking down all day long at our phones. And so I think with going analog, it's going to force a lot of people to, again, go do actual activities. Like I said, me and my friends, a lot of them are I'm not personally doing dry January. I don't drink that much anymore anyways, but they were like, what are wholesome activities we can all go do? Let's go bowling. When was the last time you and your friends just were like, all right, let's go bowling? I don't know. I think it's fun. But social media it makes us dopamine addicted. It doesn't actually give us oxytocin, which is a very important hormone. And I'm not a brain expert, but this is what I found in my research. But essentially, I want us all to look at like social media and AI use as just emotional junk food, right? Because when we look at nutrition from a physical sense and we talk about junk food and processed foods, we all know too much of anything is a bad thing. We talk about how you could have it in small doses, get your sweet treat, but just don't go overboard. That is how we should be looking at social media and AI use, because I think AI can be a helpful tool. A lot of people are using it too much and becoming so reliant on it that they can't function for themselves. So that is basically what social media is just emotional junk food. And people are becoming addicted to those instant dopamine hits, the likes, the comments, the subscribes. Like I have found that struggled with that balance in growing this podcast too. Like I'm not immune to all of these issues, but I think going analog too, the most important thing that's going to do for you and your relationships, it's going to force you to confront your relationship with your own solitude. I've talked about how being single forces you to love your alone time and it makes you get to know yourself, but going analog will take it one step further, because when was the last time you were able to sit without your phone, right? Like learning to fill your time and your void without your phone instead of learning to fill the void with things other than your phone is so important. Like allowing yourself to sit with your thoughts, be present with those thoughts, process them, write them down in a journal, or, bring a book to a cafe or a bar and enjoy your, alone time. I think a lot of people use their phones and social media to fill a certain void, and it's normally an emotional connection void, but a void nonetheless. And so I think going analog would help you if you struggle with that as well. I think another thing we're going to see in response to this analog trend and the way people are so sick of AI being spoon-fed to us is we're going to see a lot of human-made disclaimers. And I think that's sad. The fact that we're at a place in society where we need a logo that says human produced or human made, like as if it's some sort of badge of honor, is really sad to me. We have already seen brands use AI to create posters and billboards, and the negative responses that people have had to them, which rightfully so. I think creatives should never be ousted by AI as a creative. But I think we're going to see people leaning into that in their marketing, in their advertising. They're going to show you the process of creating the photo or creating the ad. They're going to document it. And we're going to see maybe even, I'm predicting like some mixed media, printing paper and stop motion. Maybe stop motion comes back. I don't know. But I think it's going to really change the way brands look at marketing and look at their relationship with the consumer. And I think it should, right? Like brands are at the mercy of the consumer. And I'm really curious to see how they react to all of these things. I also think it's going to be interesting to see how the algorithms change in response to people going offline, because again, like I said earlier, social media usage peaked in 2022 and people are using it less and less these days as they improve their relationship with it, because they are so sick of being constantly advertised to, constantly influenced, constantly seeing lifestyles that they cannot relate to because they can barely afford to put food on their tables. So I'm curious to see also how companies like Meta and TikTok react to that in the way they program their algorithms going forward, because would reprogramming the algorithm to make it casual again bring people back online? Because again, there used to be a benefit, right, to posting on social media. In the early days of social media, it was you connect with your friends, you get a ton of likes and comments, and people just engage with your stuff. There was no other transaction other than that. It was just simple. Then social media started getting monetized. And I think some people may have stopped posting because they're like, why am I going to use this platform for free when my friends, the people I care about seeing and wanting them to see my stuff, aren't going to see anything? So what's the point? Like, people don't see the point in posting on social media anymore, because unless you're trying to be an influencer or grow a platform, there really is no social benefit anymore, right? And so I think I would be curious to see if the algorithm does shift to where you could maybe filter it to only see the people that you follow. I would be curious to see if that impacts the rates at which people post on social media, because I remember a time in college where it was like, I would be posting Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I had to have a different photo of my going out outfit for whatever the theme was of the frat party that night. And like, no one did photo dumps. No one did like, I'm going to post once every 2 months. And that, like, if you didn't post for a weekend, everyone was like, sound the alarms. Where did she go? Now it's like, I have so many best friends that have not posted in years, and that's fine. That's their choice, but they're more offline than I will ever be. So I would be curious to see how going forward in 2026, this analog trend kind of folds out in pop culture and media and what impact it does have. Also, I would be curious to see the impact it's going to have on the physical cost, the cost of physical media, right? Because again, I think part of going analog, people are craving, cheap hobbies, and all of that stuff. So I'd be curious to see, as the demand goes up, are they going to jack up the rates of things like yarn and crochet needles and books and all of these things? But there are relatively inexpensive ways to be analog. Going to your local public library is a great way, and using those resources. And I don't want people to think you need to be I think it's about redefining your relationship with technology and redefining and just defining in general what going analog means to you. I'm not saying you have to be like going up and being Amish and no longer having Wi-Fi to be analog in 2026, but I think examining what it is you're feeling that is driving you to want to have more analog hobbies and just all these buzzwords in general, nostalgia bait, analog, digital, like all of these buzzwords, everything has to have a label now and fit a certain aesthetic to be trending. And it's just like, just do what you like. Again, when was the last time you did something simply because you liked it and not because anybody said it was cool or had a viral video about it? Again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with doing things because they're popular on social media, but like, it's just a weird time and dynamic in the world and society. And so I'm super curious to see how all of this changes. Because again, I'm trying to greatly limit my screen time, right? And also like what even, again, count, like I'm a photographer. I have to, my screen time is always going to be pretty high because I edit photos and I edit video on my laptop. But like, should I just focus on my social media screen time? Like, I don't know. That's something I need to examine for myself. But if you are looking for a great way to be analog in 2026, I may suggest you sign up for the Tough Love Club. If you are sick of me talking about it too damn bad. The Tough Love Club is the snail mail club I launched in December for the podcast that focuses all about journaling and reconnecting with yourself. And every month I'm exploring a different theme through journal prompts. So January's prompts are geared towards this 2026 rebrand trend, connecting with yourself, figuring out who you want to be in the future and living your life according to that. Because that's all you need to do to rebrand your life. It is so simple and people are making it so complicated. But all you need to do if you want to rebrand is figure out what version of yourself am I trying to be and what do I need to change to become that version of yourself. That's it. It is so simple. Like, and I always say, I'm beating it into you guys. I can't even, if you guys went back in all these episodes, I've said this a million times. If you don't know who you are, if you don't know what you like, look at what you liked doing as a kid. That is the best place to start. Adulthood is literally about coming back to yourself, reconnecting with your inner child and actually liking them this time instead of growing up to hate yourself. And I think going analog is honestly a great way to do that because also our generation is kind of the last generation to not be iPad kids. I don't think iPads even came out until I was in I want to say 4th or 5th grade. Hang on, I'm Googling it. Yeah. I was 12 years old when the iPad was invented. That was already I was entering teenage years. So I remember having to, again, grow up reading and drawing and painting. And I think today's generations are missing that. And I think it's funny how we were seeing a lot of teenagers romanticize the 2000s because it's like, oh God, am I old? I'm officially old. They're romanticizing zebra print and pink bedrooms. Oh my God. Yeah, no, I didn't have a pink zebra bedroom growing up. I had a purple and yellow bedroom with animal print all over. I love my parents for being so supportive of me, but why did they ever let me paint my childhood bedroom purple and yellow? I'm not a Minnesota Vikings fan. I don't know what that was about, but I digress. I have yapped y'all's ear off enough. Let me know how you guys are planning on going analog in 2026. I want to hear all about the hobbies you're going to learn. I want to hear all about your thoughts on going analog and the trend itself. And don't forget to sign up for the Snail Mail Club if you're looking for something to get into, and subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple, wherever you listen, and on Instagram. We are at Not the Girl Next Door Podcast. I am your host, Meg Reynolds, and I will see you guys next week for another episode. Bye for now.